As I huddled in the corner of my room, my heart racing and my hands trembling, I couldn't believe what had just happened. I had always been fascinated by horror stories and the supernatural, but I never thought I would actually experience something like this. But now, as I heard the howl of the werewolf outside my window, I knew that my life would never be the same again. It all started on a cold and stormy night, the perfect setting for a horror movie. I was home alone. My parents were out of town for the weekend and my friends were all busy with their own plans. I decided to make the most of my alone time and watch some scary movies. Little did I know that it would turn into a real-life nightmare. As I sat on my couch, wrapped in a cozy blanket, I heard a strange noise coming from outside. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but the noise seemed to be getting closer. I paused the movie and got up to take a look. As I peered through the window, I saw a pair of glowing eyes staring back at me. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was a werewolf, just like the ones I had read about in books and seen in movies. My heart started pounding as I quickly closed the curtains and locked all the doors and windows. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me, but deep down I knew it was real. The howling grew louder and more intense, sending shivers down my spine. I could feel its presence, lurking outside my house, waiting for the right moment to attack. I was terrified, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't have any weapons or any way to defend myself against this creature. All I could do was wait and hope that it would go away. But the howling continued throughout the night, and I soon realized that it wasn't going to leave. As the night went on, the howling turned into growls and snarls, getting closer and closer to my house. I could hear its heavy footsteps outside, and I knew that it was just a matter of time before it broke in. I was trapped with no way out. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, the power went out. Darkness engulfed my house, and I was left in complete silence, except for the sound of the werewolf scratching at my door. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to move or even scream for help. As I sat there, helpless and alone, I could feel a strange sensation come over me. It was as if something was taking over my body, and I couldn't fight it. Suddenly, I felt my bones crack and my body contort into a new form. I had become a werewolf. I could feel the power and the hunger coursing through my body, and I knew that I had to join the pack outside. I broke open the door and ran into the darkness, howling with the others. It was a terrifying and exhilarating experience, and I knew that I was no longer human. The next morning, I woke up in my room, human once again. I couldn't believe what had happened, and I was scared to leave my house. But as the days went on, I couldn't resist the urge to transform into a werewolf again. It became a part of who I was, and I couldn't fight it. To this day, I still hear the howls of the werewolf every full moon, and I know that I will never be able to escape its call. It's a constant reminder of the horror I experienced that stormy night, and I know that I will never be the same again. I've been living on Wisteria Lane for as long as I can remember. It's a quiet, suburban street with perfectly manicured lawns and picturesque houses. But there's something eerie about this place, something that sends shivers down my spine every time I walk down the street. It's the ghostly whispers that haunt this neighborhood. I first heard them on a dark and stormy night. I was walking home from work, my umbrella struggling to keep me dry. As I passed by the old abandoned house on Wisteria Lane, I heard a faint whisper. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but then I heard my name being called out. I stopped in my tracks, my heart racing in my chest. I looked around, but there was no one in sight. I shrugged it off as my imagination and continued on my way. But the whispers didn't stop there. They followed me everywhere I went on Wisteria Lane. I heard them while I was cooking dinner, while I was taking a shower, even when I was trying to sleep at night. They were always there, whispering my name, calling out to me. I tried to ignore them, but they only grew louder and more persistent. I started to avoid walking down Wisteria Lane, taking longer routes to get home. But no matter where I went, the whispers would follow. I was starting to feel like I was going crazy. I confided in my neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, about the strange whispers, hoping she could offer some explanation. But she just gave me a sympathetic smile and said, "Oh, dear, "You've heard the ghostly whispers of Wisteria Lane." I was taken aback by her words. Ghostly whispers? Was this neighborhood haunted? Mrs. Jenkins went on to tell me the story of Wisteria Lane. Back in the 1800s, there was a family who lived in the abandoned house. The father was a cruel and abusive man, and one night, his wife and children were found brutally murdered. The father was never caught, and it's said that he still roams the streets of Wisteria Lane, unable to rest in peace. I didn't want to believe in ghosts, but the whispers were getting louder and more desperate. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I followed the whispers to the abandoned house. The front door creaked open, and I cautiously stepped inside. The house was dark and dusty, and I could feel a chill in the air. The whispers were getting louder, and I could make out the words, "Help me." I followed the whispers to the basement, and that's when I saw her. A ghostly figure of a woman, her face contorted in fear and pain. She looked at me with pleading eyes, and I knew she was the wife of the cruel man who once lived here. I could feel her pain and sorrow, and I knew I had to help her. I started to research the history of the house and the family who lived here. I found out that the husband was indeed a cruel and abusive man, and he had killed his family in a fit of rage. I also found out that the wife's name was Rebecca. With the help of a medium, I was able to communicate with Rebecca and help her cross over to the other side. After that night, the whispers stopped. Wisteria Lane was no longer haunted by the ghostly whispers. The neighborhood felt lighter, and the people seemed happier. No one knew what had happened, but I knew that I had helped a lost soul find peace. Now, when I walk down Wisteria Lane, I no longer feel the eerie presence of the whispers. Instead, I feel a sense of peace and closure. And I know that Rebecca is finally resting in peace, no longer trapped on this earthly plane. Wisteria Lane will always hold a special place in my heart, for it's where I helped a ghost find peace and where I learned to believe in the supernatural. I've always been fascinated with the supernatural. As a horror author, I've spent countless hours researching and writing about ghosts, demons, and curses. But nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to experience. It started with a simple dare from my friends. They knew about my interest in the paranormal and thought it would be fun to explore the abandoned cemetery at the edge of town. It was known as the Forgotten Cemetery because no one had been buried there for over 100 years. Rumors and legends surrounded the place, with stories of a curse that had befallen anyone who dared to step foot inside its gates. I was hesitant at first, but my curiosity got the better of me. We arrived at the cemetery late at night, the moon casting an eerie glow over the crumbling headstones. My friends were laughing and joking, but I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that washed over me. As we walked deeper into the cemetery, I noticed that the air felt thick and heavy. It was as if the spirits of the dead were watching us, waiting for us to make a mistake. My friends were oblivious to the ominous atmosphere, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that we were being watched. We came across an old mausoleum, its doors slightly ajar. My friends dared me to go inside, and I couldn't resist the challenge. As I pushed open the doors, a musty smell filled my nostrils and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. Inside, there were rows of coffins lining the walls, some of them open with decaying bodies inside. I could feel the presence of something evil in the room, and I knew we needed to leave immediately. But it was too late. As we turned to leave, we heard a blood-curdling scream coming from outside. We ran out of the mausoleum, only to find that we were surrounded by hooded figures. Their eyes were glowing red, and they were chanting in a language I couldn't understand. My friends and I tried to run, but we were trapped. The hooded figures began to close in on us, their faces contorting into grotesque forms. One of them grabbed my arm, and I could feel a burning sensation spreading through my body. Just when I thought it was all over, a bright light appeared and the hooded figures vanished. We were left standing in the middle of the cemetery, shaken and terrified. My friends and I never spoke about that night again, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something had followed me home. That was the beginning of the curse of the Forgotten Cemetery. Every night, I would be visited by the hooded figures in my dreams, and I could feel their icy touch on my skin. I became paranoid, constantly looking over my shoulder, convinced that they were coming for me. My writing suffered, as I couldn't focus on anything else but the curse that had been placed upon me. I tried to warn others about the dangers of the forgotten cemetery, but no one believed me. They thought it was just another one of my horror stories. But the curse was real, and it was slowly consuming me. I could feel my sanity slipping away, and I knew that I had to find a way to break the curse before it was too late. Through my research, I discovered that the forgotten cemetery was built on an ancient burial ground, and the curse was placed by the vengeful spirits of those who were laid to rest there. The only way to break the curse was to perform a ritual at the cemetery, on the night of a full moon. With the help of a local priest, I performed the ritual and felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The curse was finally broken, and I could sleep peacefully once again. But I will never forget the horrors I experienced in the forgotten cemetery. It was a constant reminder that some things are better left undisturbed, and that the supernatural world is not to be taken lightly. The curse may have been lifted, but the memories of that night will haunt me forever.